A parent asked me a great question the other day. How do you turn an everyday task into a school-type lesson? Join me today as I help you do just that.
I was all alone, but then you came along.
Today we're talking about how you can take an everyday task and turn it into a school-type lesson. We're going to discuss starting with the end in mind, how to create a plan, and I'm going to share with you a sample unit study. So let's begin. Start with the end in mind. We call this having objectives. As a teacher, you often will hear the word objectives. And in education, this means what is it that we want our outcome to be? What do we want to achieve? And so an objective answers the question, basically, by the end of this lesson or unit, the student will learn, and it answers what they'll learn, or the student will be able to do. And so today, we're going to consider two focuses. Our outcomes are going to be either a skill or a knowledge. So a skill will be a task the learner can perform, or a knowledge what the learner will know. So then you develop your objective based on that. And the first thing you're going to pick is an adjective. And so, when you say the student will recognize, recite, compare, describe, identify, assemble, record. You get the idea, but it's an action verb. So you take that and you put it all together. You have your audience, that's your A, audience, the student. B, the behavior, the action verbs I just talked about. C is condition, or the activity that they're going to do. And then finally, D is the degree of mastery. So we're looking for a change in behavior. That's the degree of mastery. So here's what a sample objective would sound like. The student will be able to repeat their the student will be able to repeat their multiplication facts 1 to 12 by memory with no mistakes. So unlike the way that I just did that. So the audience was the student. The behavior or action verb was that they could repeat the multiplication facts. The condition was by memory. And the D was they could do it with no mistakes. Okay? So I didn't say that they would understand their math facts. I just said that they would be able to repeat them. All right, so that's an example of an objective. Here's another one. The student will demonstrate how to plant, nurture, harvest a vegetable garden with minimal help from an adult. So there you've got it again. Student is our A. Our B, behavior, was demonstrate how to plant, nurture, and harvest a vegetable garden. And then the condition was with minimal help from an adult. That was their degree of mastery. And it doesn't have to be a school-like thing. It could also be the student will know the process for and be able to complete by themselves the 5 steps of doing the laundry in an afternoon. Okay, this is important. First of all, did you know there are 5 steps to laundry? Sort, wash, dry, fold, and put away. And to do all of those in one afternoon, that would be a degree of mastery. And wouldn't that be wonderful? I don't know about your house, but we always get through the first 2 for sure. 3. Sort, wash, dry, but the folding and put away, kind of a hassle. So anyway, but that's an example of an objective for a task, and knowing the mastery is done in an afternoon. All right, so what kinds of things would you like to teach your children? I just gave you a few ideas. Put in the comments below if you have some ideas of what you'd like to take an everyday task and turn into a lesson. And here's a bit of a pro tip for you to consider. The clearer you are on the skill or knowledge you are wanting your student to learn, the better. And it's easier to create a lesson or lessons and direct your lessons real time with that focus in mind. All right, next, let's figure out how to create a plan. All right, number 2, create a plan. Now that you know where you're going, you need to break down the steps, or the subjects, if you're subject areas, if you're doing a unit study, and decide how you're going to get there. You need to consider what materials you need, how long it's going to take, and this is probably somewhat of an estimate because you can start and then it may evolve as you go. But you have to make those choices when you create your plan. Now keep in mind how we learn, and I love this. This is the basics of the classical model, but I think it's so helpful in learning anything. The classical model has the three arts. It says first you have your grammar, and this is when you learn the tools and the vocabulary of whatever topic you're going to teach. Think knowledge input. These are the basic topics, vocabulary, tools, the foundation the student's going to need to effectively later engage in what they're doing. The second step is called dialectic. This is the practice where you apply using the vocabulary and the tools you've learned. Think understanding, processing. And then the third is called rhetoric. And this is when the student is able to teach what they've learned to somebody else, or they have enough familiarity with the subject or process that they can add their own twist. In this one, think wisdom and output. All right, so let me give you an example using the idea of a vegetable garden. What would be the grammar? Remember, we're talking about the vocabulary and tools they would need, the input about gardening. So they would need to know things, they would need to know the definition of what a seed is. They'd need to know about germination. They might need to know about soil, water, shade, exposure. They'd need to know the differences between weeds and plants, right? And they'd need to know the difference between the tools, the difference between a rake and a spade, and just all the parts that would be necessary for planting a garden. After that, then they would want to take that knowledge and apply it, sort of put it together. And this is when they would maybe go and purchase the seeds, choose which seeds they're going to use. And then they would have to know, they'd plant them and learn why. Why do you plant this one in the shade maybe? Why does it matter if they're so far apart? Maybe they make the mistake and put their seeds too close together and they've got kind of a mess. Just those kinds of things as they learn through doing. We call that the dialectic, and sort of learning the why. And then finally, they produce the garden, and now they kind of know the tricks of the trade. They can tell somebody else coming up alongside them who maybe has less experience, and they can say, this is what I learned. I learned that these are the best cucumber seeds. Or I learned that if I water at this time, it works better than if I water at that time. Okay, so that's the process you go through as you learn. So now that we've kind of broken that down to those pieces, let's decide where we go from here. Your learning can be informal or formal. It can be as informal or as simple as, hey guys, here are the tools, this is what they are, let's go out, let's do it, right? And that would be great learning. Or what my friend was kind of looking for was a way to do it with some more scholastically. She wanted to do the gardening, but she wanted some of the school type pieces along with it. So that's how I'm going to show you, that's what I'm going to show you in our next section. 3, sample unit study. The parent was interested in, as I said, how to make this like a school type activity. So I suggested she create a unit study, and I'm going to tell you some of my ideas for the unit study. And here's a pro tip. When you take a theme like this, and I'm going to use the example of gardening, and you can take this and adjust it for all the ages of your children. That's what I love about homeschooling. You could have a preschooler or elementary student and a high school student. You could do a unit study on gardening, and you could have different activities according to their level. And then the family is engaged all in the same theme. Let me show you what I mean. So again, we were saying, let's say that our objective is that my student or students will gain a working knowledge of gardening and will plant and tend a garden of 5 types of vegetables. All right, so I take that and I want them to be able to demonstrate their knowledge. A simple lesson could look something like this. Maybe I introduce all the different tools, and maybe there's 10 of them, and I lay them out, and I have my students, maybe I number the tools, and they just take a piece of paper and write down number 1, rake. Number 5, watering can. Or I could say, I want you to write the definitions for these items, or take these and use them in a sentence. That would be an example of more scholastic activity. Okay, so each lesson can have a formal objective or just a skill or knowledge and an assessment attached to that activity. And when I say assessment, I don't necessarily mean test. Like what I just said there, if you were to write on a piece of paper 1 to 10 and write down the words for the items, that could be more like a test. But it could be, an assessment could be, hey, can you name these items? Or can you tell me what happens when we do this? Assessment is just any way for you to see that your student is learning what it is you're hoping that they'll learn. Okay, so now our unit study. Let's look at gardening. So say you want to take gardening and you want to learn about it in all subject areas. How would you do that? Well, for reading, you might choose a fiction book like Peter Rabbit or The Secret Garden or James and the Giant Peach. And you might read those books along the same time that you're doing some of these other gardening activities. And what's fun about that is you could have, again, different age students and make it applicable to them. So a young child could hear the story and they could just draw a picture and write 1 sentence. An older student could do a chapter summary or do a 5-paragraph paper on the author. If you were doing spelling, you could choose words from the book and the students could learn those spelling words. And you could have other ones could choose words from the book they don't know, look up definitions, or even look at word patterns, like find again words from the stories you're reading and see, this is consonant, vowel, consonant, or let's pick 10 bossy E words from the story. So that would be a way that you could do spelling. Now, for math, some of these concepts could be taught, I'm going to share with you, some of these concepts could be taught simpler to small children and more complicated to older children. Things you could do is, as you were planning your garden, sectioning the area, where are you going to plant it? It's kind of mathematical. Smaller children could sort the seeds and sort them according to size, shape, or color, or when it's best to plant them. You could do measuring, calculate the perimeter and the area of your garden in inches, yards, centimeters, meters. Figure out the area of one vegetable, how much room did the tomatoes take. You could have, calculations, have a vegetable stand and learn about profits as you sell your vegetables. How much did you make in profits? For science, oh my goodness, there's so many topics you could do. Taxonomy, types of plants, inside a seed. If you're doing social studies, you can talk about farming in general, or there's so many neat things in farming right now. And GMOs, you could, all kinds of stuff. And you could do cooking and cooking with vegetables. There's so many ways you could take the concept of gardening and make it into these school type activities and have a whole unit of learning. I want to show you 2 of my 2 books just as ideas. Now, this one is my favorite. This is Exploring Creation with Botany by Apologia. So many wonderful ideas, wonderful reading, wonderful projects, experiments, just a great resource. And then I pulled this, and honestly, I can't really truly recommend it because I don't know that I've ever cooked out of it, but just as an idea, you could do, cooking is fun, and got math skills, of course, and it's very rewarding. So this was a vegetarian gourmet recipes. So that would be another thing that another part that you could do in your lesson that would be fun. But anyway, those are just a few ideas. And if you're part of our community, I'm going to have this all typed out for you, the plans for a unit study for you, so you can get that resource in there. But I just wanted to show you that you can take anything you're interested in or you want to help your students to learn about, and you can take it and expand it. You can make objectives. You can create a plan. You can create just a single lesson or a whole unit study, and it can be a wonderful experience for your whole family. And I just wanted to add too, one of the wonderful things of doing something like this is you might get into it and find that your student, is really interested in, tea or herbs or something. And your unit study might take a little bit of a different direction. We actually did this as a family, and my son just he really found herbs interesting. So we took a whole lot of time. We went to the library and just studied more because that's where his interest went. And you know what? We were doing those scholastic skills, reading, processing, mathematics, all of those tied in with it. It didn't matter that we took that little detour that I hadn't planned about herbs. It was totally appropriate. So there it is. That is how you can take an everyday task and turn it into a school-like activity. As we've seen, you can take everyday tasks and turn them into enjoyable learning experiences. So let's explore. That's when learning is fun. I trust that this information will help you feel confident to create lessons for your ideas. And share below what's worked for you and even what hasn't. Also, we appreciate every share and every like, and we hope that you'll subscribe so you can get contact as soon as we make it. And until then, remember, yes, you can homeschool.